This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Monday Mashup on Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Monday, September 17th. We are coming off the Lions, are 0-2 after a loss at San Francisco. My Patriots took a huge loss to the Jags today. Tons to talk about as far as college football and how the Big Ten is shaping up after 3 weeks, and the NFL after week 2, and some really strange things that went down in the NFL, including one Vontae Davis for the Buffalo Bills. Some other stuff to get to. Before we get to all of that, just have to fill you in, as always, on The Athletic. They pay our bills, so I got to tell you about them. The Athletic is the place for premium sports coverage. At this point, I'm sure that you've heard of them because they've poached every good writer from every good outlet and taken them in. Shams Charania just joined the crew to drop sham bombs for the NBA with The Athletic. And it is subscription-based, but we're here to give you a discount because we're such great people. It's 30% off if you're a Detroit Sports Podcast listener. All you have to do is go to theathletic.com/DSP, and you will get 30% off your Athletic subscription. That's at theathletic.com/DSP. Check it out. I promise it's the best place besides Detroit Sports Podcast Network to get all your premium sports coverage. Bringing in my co-host, Tanner Seltzer. Tons to talk about. Tanner, I'm a little brokenhearted today after the Patriots went and just laid an egg in Jacksonville. In my opinion, and another lousy coaching job from Bill Belichick. We might get to that in a little bit. But what's going on your side of the woods?
Not much, just another day of NFL football, loving it. A little bit under the weather today, so I apologize ahead of time to our listeners if you get annoyed at my nasally voice, but you're going to have to deal with it anyway. So, yeah, that's how I'm doing today, Shea.
Yeah, that's right, listeners. You got to just deal with it.
Deal with it.
I'm angry. Tanner's sick. Just deal with it. But before we get to all the wonderful things that happened in sports this weekend, there was a topic on... We're avid podcast listeners because we're podcasters. And on Jalen and Jacoby's podcast, which I'm sure some people listen to, they had a really interesting question that I had to think about. And they talked about it, made huge waves on social media, so I wanted to cover it, and I wanted to ask Tanner, and I want to comment on this too. Jalen and Jacoby were asking, have you ever turned down sex to watch sports?
For me, it's a no. And just to clarify, I've not had that many opportunities to turn it down, but the times that I have had the opportunity, I have not turned it down. And I told you right before we got on air, I may or may not have got in a quick session before a big Michigan game in the recent season. I will not go into further detail because that person may or may not be listening. But
yeah, it's all right. Nah, man, I got to say, all right, so Jalen brought up a great point because apparently it was a poll. 2,000 people were asked the question, have you ever turned down sex to watch sports? 20% said yes. Which I kind of at first was like, I think that's a small number, but then you go 400 out of 2,000. It's actually a pretty big number when you think about it. And then Jalen made a great point because Jalen said those 400 that have turned down sex to watch sports either are married or live with their significant other. Because if you don't live together or you're not married and sex is only coming so often when you can get in the same house alone, you're not going to turn down sex to watch the game if you're like, hey, my parents are gone. You're not going to go, oh, no, I got to watch Michigan. You only get so many opportunities. But, no, I live with my fiance. I have turned down sex to watch sports. I can honestly say I've gone, no, you know what? Maybe if you're still awake after the game, we'll see what's going on. But I also think it might be a dumb move on my part because, if we're being honest, it doesn't take that long. The game is 3 hours. I'm not going to be held up for the duration of a sporting event.
Yeah, I guess in those situations, there's no pressure to last long because you're trying to hurry.
That's true. I mean? So let me get mine. I'm out.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I thought it was a hilarious topic. It's kind of where I wanted to start the show, especially since I'm a little bit sour today after what happened in Jacksonville in your dwelling.
Yeah, my new team. I'm jumping on the bandwagon.
Oh God.
I'm just kidding.
We will maybe get to that. I'm not going to go too deep because I know the Detroit listeners are going to get bored out of their minds if they listen to me rant about my issues with arguably the greatest coach in history.
You need a whole separate podcast for your Patriots rants,
dude. You might be onto something. I might have to start a podcast where I just talk about the Patriots.
Yeah, and you can just vent all your anger on that podcast.
Those of you who are very interested, I went on a Twitter rant. You can check it out. Shameless plug, at Norling Shea on Twitter. College football. I have a question, Tanner.
What's that?
Is the Big Ten trash?
The verdict, the jury's still out on that one, but all signs are pointing to you being correct, and maybe they might be trash. Because it looks like a couple, ranked Big Ten teams and a couple unranked Big Ten teams lost some big games at home to out-of-conference opponents. And namely, the big one was Wisconsin losing at home to BYU, which is just absurd.
Perennial playoff hopeful Wisconsin. Perennial top defense. Perennial top run game Wisconsin. Holding an L in their fortress in Madison, Wisconsin to Brigham Young University and the Mormons from Utah. I am absolutely shocked. One, it was the fourth quarter and Wisconsin was down and they were driving. And I was like, wow, Wisconsin... Look, they are what I thought they were because, one, I always think that they're a little more highly rated than they should be. But I was also like, this is kind of shocking that it's going to take a last-minute field goal to send this game to overtime. And then they shanked the field goal. I was like, holy shit, Wisconsin sucks. How do you lose at home to BYU? Nebraska can't stop losing at home. It's unbelievable. The only good team in the Big Ten to me right now, like the only outright for sure good team is Ohio State.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is even like a Big Ten problem. I think this is a national problem because I was telling you earlier, I think there's like 4 to 6 teams that are legit this year, like that will compete for a national title in a college football playoff appearance, but and then there's like everyone else. Like they're just not the same caliber of team that the Alabamas, the Clemsons, the Georgias, the Ohio States, the LSUs, like those type of teams are. The Oklahomas, those are probably like my top 6 that are like, okay, yeah, these teams are legit. They will compete for the Final Four, and everyone else is just kind of everyone else until proven otherwise. Now,
even Oklahoma they slowed down a little bit against Iowa State. Clemson.
Iowa State's tricky, though.
They are.
They're
Clemson
the same as Iowa.
At one point was losing to Georgia Southern early, but I don't want to get too crazy because they got things in order. I look at the teams that I've watched so far this year. Notre Dame is ranked top 10 for God knows what reason. Because, yeah, they beat Michigan, but they couldn't put away Ball State late. They couldn't put away Vanderbilt late, and they've played 3 straight games at home. I don't trust Notre Dame to do anything this season. And I look at all the other teams, and you're right, dude. It's just a few. Like Oklahoma, despite the fact that they slowed down, Kyler Murray is a dog, and he clearly wants to win something before he stops playing football. LSU, Ed Orgeron has his guys ready to go. Bama is Bama. Georgia's playing out of their minds. And Ohio State is doing what Ohio State does. Oh, and by the way, they get Urban Meyer back next week.
Yeah, I'm sure they're all excited about that, even though I still have questions about that whole scandal. But we're not getting into that. That's a whole different subject. I will say, but the touchback on the Big Ten, I don't even know, I feel like we've seen years like this where, big teams lose out of conference games just for whatever reason. But towards the end of the year, they kind of show their true colors and, you see what comes to fruition. In the case of Michigan, I think the jury is still out on them. Obviously they lose on the road to Notre Dame, who is a top 10 opponent, but I don't think they're a top 10 personally. Like I said earlier, like last week, I think it was, I say they're a three-loss team and they're lucky to get 10 wins this season. So, I think the jury's still out on them to show if that defense can improve a little bit. They've been a little shaky to start the season. They showed some inconsistency against SMU. The offense looked a little better. It looks like they're improving every week, Shea. So I will say the jury is still out on Michigan.
And maybe there is to some degree truth that it takes these games against inferior non-conference opponents to build a level of confidence in your offense, especially in Michigan's case. But it is interesting because a year ago, we were all sitting here going, the Big Ten is clearly top to bottom the best conference in America for football. And now I'm looking at it and I'm like, most of these teams are returning a ton of starters. Why is Ohio State, the one team that has a ton of freshmen and sophomores starting, the one team that I'm confident in right now? And I do have questions about their defense, but their offense is so good. Dude, Dwayne Haskins is incredible.
Oh yeah, and I said to you jokingly, I was like, I'd have sex with his spiral because he has a nice spiral, dude. He really does. You can
it's like Kirk Cousins.
Nice. Yeah, you got that joke with Kirk Cousins, but he can throw it in Dobbins. He's like a mini Zeke Elliott, bro. He's quick. He's not fast. He can get through, make the cuts that he needs to, and make big plays. So yeah, that offense is legit, and they showed it against TCU in I will say not a true neutral site game. That was more of a home game for TCU than it was a neutral site in my opinion.
Yeah, and then like you look at Michigan State after the loss to Arizona State, and the Michigan State apologists and for the coordinators will come out and they'll, well, they got the bye week to get things together. Or in 2013, they lost a road non-conference game at Notre Dame, and then they went undefeated the rest of the way and won the Rose Bowl. But like people miss that Michigan State team had, for the only time in recent memory, a legitimate coordinator on either side of the ball, and Pat Narduzzi as the defensive coordinator. With Michigan, I look at Michigan. And it's weird because the only thing I've seen consistently play very well is from their most maligned unit on the offensive line. The interior of their offensive line has been very consistent and very good. Everywhere else on Michigan has just been wildly inconsistent and a little underwhelming so far. And then you look at Wisconsin, obviously you can't lose to BYU at home. And Nebraska, who everybody's like, Scott Frost came in, maybe this is the year they bounce back, already has 2 home losses. Penn State hasn't looked impressive. I don't know where the saving grace outside of Ohio State is for this conference.
It's just going to come down to the conference games once they start, because you're going to start seeing these bloodbaths inside the conference of, can these big teams like the Penn States, the Michigans, Michigan States, et cetera, can they survive these lower conference teams like the Nebraskas, like you mentioned? Is that a fluke? Was their loss? Are they going to start showing some life with Scott Frost? Teams like that, and you got to see. It's going to come down to making it to the Big Ten title. For teams like Michigan and Ohio State, obviously, they gotta make it to the Big Ten, and even Michigan State, if they want any shot at the CFP, they gotta make it to the Big Ten title and win that now. Yeah. They can't risk. I don't think you can. Any teams really, besides Ohio State, of course, they somehow seem to be in the discussion every year, can risk a 2-loss season, and a 1 loss in the Big Ten overall conference will not get you into the playoff this year.
Really, yeah. The way the Big Ten started, I don't know that any 2-loss Big Ten team is going to get in because the SEC looks so good. Auburn looks fantastic. LSU looks fantastic. Georgia, Alabama look fantastic. There's a chance that the SEC East goes another year sending 2 teams. Or the SEC West, excuse me. And I don't think that the Big Ten really has that this year, the way things have started, with Michigan State taking a loss, Penn State looking bad against Appalachian State, not super impressive against Pitt. Ohio State, the only thing popping off. My other college football thing is this, and this is kind of just a for fun thing I want to throw in, but how many more seasons are we going to have to go where Texas loses a non-conference game early and then beats a better opponent on the road, or a perceived better opponent on the road, and we have to listen to the broadcast team bend themselves into a pretzel talking about, people expect Texas to rebuild and it'll be immediate, but they have to understand that it's a process. Like, bro, it's been a decade. I think we're beyond process at this point.
I mean, yeah, they beat a inferior USC team at home. They have a freshman quarterback starting for them. He's barely 18 years old. So yeah, I mean, I personally, Texas is out of my mind. Like, ever since like 2005, 2006 with Vince Young, they've been, by the most part, irrelevant.
Well, they played that national title game against Alabama in 2010, but since then they haven't done anything.
Oh yeah, that is true. I forgot about that. Colt McCoy leading the way for them, and then he gets hurt. But yeah, you're right. Other than that, they've been kind of very, very quiet, and then every year it's kind of like, oh, this is it, and it's not it.
It's not it. It's hilarious because it's like Notre Dame, USC, Michigan to an extent, Texas, just these former powerhouses that every year seem like they're there, and then they aren't. And the broadcast teams always come out and go, oh, it's a process, maybe next year. Or, oh, every single season. It's like, we've been waiting for all these schools to rebuild for 10 years. When is it just going to happen?
My question is though, what's the definition of arriving again? Like what defines a team coming to the limelight of the national media again? Because I mean, if you look at it, Notre Dame, they were in a national title with Alabama. Even though they lost, they did make it there. Is it consistency as far as, consistently winning 9-10 games a year, and then like on a third year you appear in the Final Four or something like that? Like what defines a national powerhouse team?
There's a fundamental problem when it comes to evaluating college football programs, and it's this. There's always more questions than answers, no matter what happens. That's the beauty of college basketball, because you have a 64-team tournament, right? You figure the team that wins that tournament is the best team in the country. But college football, whether it's 4 or 6 or 8, somebody's always going to be making an argument for a team that should have been in and a team that shouldn't have been in. And it's just, I think there's a fundamental issue because, like, you look at Notre Dame when they went to the national title game against Alabama, and everyone assumed that they were really good, but they went and got blown out, 48-0? So it's like, or 2015, Michigan State, perfect example, goes to the college football playoff, and everybody assumes because they were 12-1 that they deserve to be there, get blown out 38-0. It always leaves you with more questions than answers. Like when Ohio State got ran by Clemson or Alabama, whoever it was, and people were like, well, Penn State should have been there. It always leaves, it's really tough to evaluate college football as a program. Like, when is your program back? Unless you win a national title, it's really difficult.
Yeah, I know. And that's why I based that question, because there is always going to be that argument of like, oh, this team's never going to come back to the limelight. But I mean, in the case of Notre Dame, they've made national title appearance. Texas, not really much to say for them. I really can't, besides their national title appearance. And then Michigan, like they've had 11-win season under Hoke. They had 2 10-win seasons now under Jim Harbaugh. So like that's my question is like, what defines a comeback, or what defines a national powerhouse? So I mean, that's something that's always going to be up for debate.
Then there's the issue with Michigan. You look at, they've had the 2 10-win seasons, but they've never finished better than third in their division. And you look at other programs, maybe it's like you have to consistently be finishing top 15. Like at a 3 to 4 year clip, or you have to beat so many ranked opponents, or whatever it is. I think college football, it's very difficult to evaluate programs, and that's why every year we end up with a game where like a team that we assume is good gets beaten by a team that we assume must be better because they beat them, but it turns out both teams are garbage. Like, college football is so hard to evaluate. It's much different than the NFL, which always has surprises, but by mid-year, it's kind of cut and dry what teams are good and what teams are bad.
Yeah, I agree. And just real quick, I think we can wrap this up. Like, for the past, let's say 6 years, who are the 3 teams you think of every time there's a national title discussion? It's Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State. And Georgia's just now coming into the national spotlight. So I think outside of that, though, only those 3 teams can say they are national powerhouses that are consistently fighting for relevance in the CFP.
Yeah, I would agree. Oklahoma could slide themselves in there because they've made the playoff twice. Michigan State had an opportunity to get there, but they decided they didn't want to play with the big boys and went 3-9. You can't do that. I think you look at, you're right. It's really, if I had to say 4 teams that could say they're powerhouses, it would be Ohio State, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Clemson.
Yep. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like you have to strive to year in, year out. Like you said, 3 out of 4 years, you got to be in the discussion into the final weekend of the college football. And
maybe it's a problem with the sport where the Final Four elevated how we expect teams to perform and to get to that powerhouse level. But to me, it is what it is. But anyway, we should move on. NFL, crazy stories. First, I want to say Fitzmagic is one of my favorite things that's ever happened.
Yeah, they're now 2-0, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the dude, like, no one, I don't think anybody expected Ryan Fitzpatrick to come light it up like this. And he had success at the Jets, but I would have never guessed this in a million years happening in Tampa Bay.
Throwing 8 touchdowns, 8 or 9 touchdowns in the first 2 weeks, I would have never called this. I do want to beat my chest a little bit because I said a few weeks ago on this podcast that I thought there was a chance Ryan Fitzpatrick came in and stole Jameis Winston's job. At this point, I think it's done and over with. He's stolen the job. It's Ryan Fitzpatrick's job to lose now. But Nobody could have seen this coming. 9 touchdowns in 2 weeks, outplaying the hell out of the Saints, and now today just putting on a show again. He's commanding the offense with ease, and they actually look like a pretty good football team.
Yeah, I mean, you go and do that against the Super Bowl defending champs. That's no easy task. I mean, that defense is not a joke, and he went out there and did his thing. Granted, they were at home, but that doesn't matter.
Defense travels.
They got weapons. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it should. And that offense apparently travels too, because they went from New Orleans back to Tampa Bay, and they showed out both times. So, I mean, hats off to him. And then he had the most legendary post-press conference I think I've ever seen.
Mr. Steal Your Girl walked right up to the podium, chest hair out, chains around his neck, big-ass aviators on with a smile on his face. Ryan Fitzmagic is the NFL MVP through 2 weeks. I'm comfortable in saying it.
Yeah, he's my MVP for sure because, well, actually, we do have another quarterback we have to get to later, but he is definitely in the discussion for MVP through 2 weeks. And he went out and borrowed his teammate Deshaun Jackson's clothes, and he said, "Sir, I will give you these right back after this press conference because I have to show off a little bit after these first 2 games."
When Deshaun came to the media room from the locker room without a shirt in just his compression shorts, and Ryan Fitzpatrick was like, "Oh, sorry, Deshaun, I'll give you your clothes back." It's just an amazing moment, and it's clear that this team is having fun. They're a far cry from the team that was awkwardly looking at Jameis Winston talking about eating a dub. They're so far from that. Like, they're enjoying each other's company right now. I don't see any way that Jameis gets this job back unless Ryan Fitzpatrick falls off an absolute cliff. But honestly, if I'm the Bucs, with Jameis Winston's off-the-field issues and what Ryan Fitzpatrick is doing on the field right now, I would have no qualms about taking that job from him, and I'm probably looking at shopping him for trades or releasing.
Yeah, I would take the cap hit, even just cutting him. Just take the cap hit and get rid of him because I don't think it's worth all the drama off the field that he brings. It seems like every other year. And my question is, Shea, too, is like if that does end up happening with Jameis Winston, he does get cut. Does any team even take a shot at him? I feel like maybe one or two, but like if I'm at GM, I'm not even touching him.
Yeah, I don't think, like, what are you going to do? What GM's going to go out of their way to pay a guy who's gone 3-13 and has all the off-the-field issues in the world? He's just an absolute dumpster fire. If I'm the Bucs, I'm seriously looking at cutting him at this point.
Oh, yeah, I agree, 100%.
It may... Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry. No, I was just going to say, I was going to try to round up into our next discussion because maybe this team would take a shot at him because their quarterback situation is not pretty either. The Buffalo Bills...
Imagine your quarterback situation being so bad that a player retires at halftime. Literally retires he walked into the locker room, changed into his regular ass clothes, drove home, and the head coach found out from a third party that Vontae Davis just quit and retired.
Yeah, this has to be like top 3 craziest stories I've ever heard of a dude. He's like, does he get half a game check for that? Because he played one half. You know what I mean?
He probably doesn't even give a shit about the game check.
Yeah,
he was like, dude, I'm out. Forget
he's like, this is completely awful. I don't blame him, to be honest.
What was the halftime score? 28-3, and he was like, nah, dog, I'm out.
Yeah, I mean, it was something bad, but dude.
You know, in their first 6 quarters of football, they were outscored 75-6.
Wow. That's incredible. At least they didn't get at least they scored some points in this game. It was 31-20 final score, but dude, they looked like 0-16 watch in the first half for sure, and it still probably is on for them.
I mean, they've gotten beaten. The Chargers are a team that people were like dark horse Super Bowl, but after week 1, when they only put up 13 points to just look dead, people are like, I don't know anymore. Today they looked good, but they were playing the Bills, who gave up 48 points to a Ravens team that looked like dog meat against the Bengals. So, like, I really think the Bills are on 0-16 watch. I don't know, especially in the division they play in. The Jets are better than they have been in the past. The Dolphins are better than they have been in the past. And the Patriots, whether they lost today or not, are the Patriots. Like, I don't see the Bills winning any of their division games, and their out of division schedule's not easy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at their schedule real quickly, and like there's like one or two games that I would highlight is maybe against the Colts, just because their defense is always suspect, and then in division opponents like the Dolphins and the Jets are going to be their only opportunities. Well, actually, they do play the Lions pretty late in the season, and the way that's looking right now.
Oh boy, that's going to be a horrible game.
Yeah, Josh Allen versus Matt Stafford, his protege, the battle of the two quarterbacks. We'll see how that goes.
Speaking of the Lions and teams with high hopes that haven't quite panned out, holy hell, can the Cleveland Browns find a way to do anything right?
They do everything right up until the very end of the game is what they do. That's what Cleveland does best, is they find a way to lose a game even when the other team is literally trying to hand them a win. They can't do it. And today was no exception against the Saints.
Tyrod Taylor with a dot to, was it Coleman? No, not Coleman. They traded
Coleman.
Higgins.
No,
it was was it Higgins? I thought it was the kid out of Florida.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah. Shoot.
I can't remember his name right now.
Callaway.
Antonio Callaway. With a dot to Antonio Callaway at the end of the game to tie it up. Then a missed extra point, and then they missed a field goal. How do the Browns keep doing this?
I don't know. I mean, we've been there, or I've been there anyway, with watching Lions. Like, it seems like just the same old SOC, same old Cleveland's, SOB, same old Browns, something like that. They get their own saying now. But it's disappointing because the defense has been pretty damn good so far this season, Shea. I will say that. And the offense has been a little iffy, and I feel like they need a boost, but they've played decent for the most part, enough to win this game. And then your kicker goes out and pretty much just chokes it away for you. That's just got to be heartbreaking. 2 weeks in a row, back-to-back, losing like that for Cleveland.
Now, Tyrod Taylor has not played bad at all. In fact, he's been pretty good. But at what point, if they keep losing games like this, well, I guess tying or losing, do you just say, look, something's got to give, and you put Baker Mayfield in?
I don't know. I think you stick with Tyrod Taylor just because he has had some success, although probably not to the level that they would want, just because they have a lot of weapons that they should be doing a lot more, in my opinion. But you got to keep Tyrod in for the time being. Let Baker, get some seasoning, let him marinate a little bit, and learn the game. And then throw him in. If things are still going bad, throw him in, see what happens, see what sticks.
It might also be a case of, after the Johnny Manziel fiasco, just not wanting to get burned by starting a quarterback too early.
Oh, yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, I think Cleveland learned their lesson from that whole fiasco, and they're pretty similar, Baker Mayfield and Johnny Manziel.
Yeah, they both have experience running from the cops.
That wasn't the route I was going with that.
Height, stature, play style, off-field antics, they're pretty much dime for dime. As rookie quarterbacks go, who's better than Pat Mahomes?
Well, I mean, technically he's not a rookie quarterback. He does have the Ben Simmons effect, though, like I mentioned.
Yeah, he's qualified as a rookie.
Yeah, he's going to win Rookie of the Year this year. We'll see. We'll watch him. The people will lose their shit if Ben Simmons and then Patrick Mahomes wins Rookie of the Year. That would be amazing.
I don't know how the rookie rule works in the NFL, to be fair. It might be better to call him first-year starter. I don't know if he's a true rookie at this point under the NFL's rules. But, dude, 3 starts, 10 touchdowns, that's impressive.
Yeah, and that third start dated back to last season as well, in like week 17. But the dude's been on fire. He set, literally, like you mentioned, he set a record for 10 touchdowns through 3 games. That's incredible. And today he goes out there and outduels a Hall of Fame quarterback in Big Ben on his home turf, where he is usually outstanding. And Big Ben was outstanding at home today. But 6 touchdowns and 0 interceptions is like just absurd to hear from a second-year quarterback.
The Chiefs might have the best offense in the NFL, and that's an insane thing to say when 3 weeks ago we were going, this Chiefs offense is going to be terrible. They really might be the best offense in the NFL.
Yeah, Andy Reid knows something that we don't, clearly, because, I mean, there was concerns Mahomes was going to, be throwing picks left and right, and he hasn't even, missed a beat so far this season. And they're right up there with the other surprise of the year, the Bucs offense, as the leading offense in the league. So, this year is just full of surprises for me so far, and I'm loving every second of it. And I just hope that KC is in it till the end. I want them to be in the playoffs at this point. I'm rooting for them just because that offense is so flashy and so much fun to watch.
Yeah, I would not mind seeing a Patriots-Chiefs AFC Championship game in New England and just Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady duel it out in the brisk New England winter. But at the rate that the Patriots went today, I don't know that that's going to happen because their defense looks like an absolute sieve. And I'm really at odds with Bill Belichick at this point. I don't think he has his fastball anymore, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, this is your new hot take, which is kind of new to me. Like I know you've been critical of Bill Belichick and his off the field decisions as far as trading certain players and just maybe on the field decisions as well. But that game today was that was big for Jacksonville. Like living down here, I listened to the radio down here. They were so excited about this game today. They were like, oh man, this is one of the biggest games. This might be the biggest game, a regular season game that we've ever had in this franchise. And they went out there and they had fun and won the game. And Tom Brady, like as much as you don't want to hear it, Tom Brady got outplayed by Blake Bortles. Like Blake Bortles shredded that defense, and obviously Tom Brady didn't have anything to do with that, but Blake Bortles went out there and did his thing, and the Jaguars pulled out a win.
There was also a portion of that game where Brady went a good hour real life time, maybe 10-15 minutes game time without touching the football, and really, as much as he did get outplayed, he was one of the few bright spots I had for the entire team. The defense looked horrible. And again, I put this on Belichick at this point because it's a take that's kind of been brooding over a few years. After he sat Malcolm Butler in the Super Bowl last season, it went from thought bubble into genuine take. And now after today, I'm fully all in on this. Belichick has lost his fastball. The dude committed to a cover one that never worked. He let Blake Bortles shred him for 400 yards. I don't know what else to say, man. He allowed that defense to go out and rob Tom Brady of a 2-minute drill before the half. I don't know. I'm really at odds with the coaching in New England right now, especially with their pickups and free agency and their trades. And speaking of New England coaches and Bill Belichick's coaching tree, it seems like it's carrying over to the Lions.
Yeah, and I was going to say real quick that it's kind of funny how the national media like to have these really big overreactions to week one. And I remember after week one, they were calling the Patriots defense, Matt Patricia was clearly, not the factor of why that defense was good, this and that. And then their defense just absolutely looked atrocious. And maybe there might be some truth to Matt Patricia having little success in New England, especially later in last season. But
it wasn't that bad.
No, he wasn't. I mean, I've never they didn't even have Leonard Fournette. They didn't have their number one weapon, and they got absolutely shredded on the defensive side of the ball.
There were people on Twitter saying, "Look, the last year's Super Bowl was a worse defensive performance than that." And I'm like, dude, at least in the Super Bowl, they were just blowing us out with long balls over the top and cracking the top of the defense. We let Bortles kill us with underneath routes without Leonard Fournette. Come on. They had some guy at running back half the game I never even heard of.
Yeah, I think, what was it, Grant? I think they're very high on him down here in Jacksonville. But he came out and showed out today. So, I mean, hats off to them. At the end of the day, you got to give your hats off to Jacksonville. They went out there and won the game. They did their thing. And as much as you have to look at it from your perspective as a New England fan, Jacksonville, you got to tip your cap to them. They're
an excellent team. And I said, even on this show, I said that I thought there was very little chance that the Patriots would be able to go on the road and win that game. And it showed today that the Jags had the home field advantage. It all worked out for them. I still have questions about them as a team. I think there was a revenge aspect to the game today, but it is what it is. We got to move on to Lions 49ers. Lions off to an 0-2 start. Tons of questions about Matt Patricia at this point, and I have a question about Matthew Stafford, Tanner.
Yeah, and I mean, just to recap for those who maybe didn't watch as much of the game as I did or Shea did, but Stafford, this team got off to a really slow start. Again, the offense was sputtering. The defense was actually the one for the first half of the game that was actually holding their own against San Francisco. They went into halftime again down 3 points. I think they did the same against the Jets, and then San Francisco pulled away in the second half, and the Lions did what the Lions try to do every single time. It seems like same old Lions. They come down from 20 points and they try to tie the game up with a heroic effort. And like you said, Shea, Stafford, to me, he was the factor again why this team is not performing. He had so many missed opportunities downfield in the first half and in the second half. He was not connecting on these deep balls on these wide receivers that are wide open. And it's just, from a 10-year veteran quarterback, you would want a little bit more consistency coming out of the game instead of just saving it all for the fourth quarter and trying to make heroics happen.
Now, my question for Matthew Stafford is this, and I agree with everything you said, but I look at Matt Stafford today, overthrew receivers on deep balls where he had open receivers. He had big plays ready to go, and he overthrew them. Or he missed throws, or he mismanaged the offense. Last week especially, failing to audible out when the Jets are spray painting his plays on the field. It just issues there. And again, this week, I saw Stafford not look excellent and not look like the top 10 guy that we claim him to be. But my question about him is this. Is it our fault for putting these expectations on him? Because if you look at his career right now, he really has all the numbers. But he's more like the Phillip Rivers, who's been unable to finish and win big games, or the Kirk Cousins, who's been unable to finish and win big games, but puts up gaudy stats, than he is the Peyton Manning, the Tom Brady, even like a Carson Wentz or Nick Foles in the playoffs last year. I don't know that Stafford is at that level. I think we've put that expectation on him, and I'm starting to think it might not be fair.
I understand what you're saying, but to me personally, I think it's completely fair of this fan base to point to him as the problem or like a reason why they aren't executing and winning games. Like I touched on before, like it seems like every season and almost every game, Stafford has inconsistencies moving the ball downfield until really late in the games. It takes him like 2 to 3 quarters to get hot or get warmed up, and then he starts going, and then the offense starts clicking. And by then their defense they're down by 2 scores at least, and they have to work from behind. And you would love just to see some consistency out of Stafford, and maybe that has something to do with the personnel around him. Maybe you're right. Maybe he's not Tom Brady, he's not Aaron Rodgers. You're right, but you just want to see consistency out of the quarterback position. It's not about leading your team downfield every single game for a comeback win.
And that's kind of where I've drawn. And like you said, it takes him 2-3 quarters to warm up, and then he starts to ball out. That's kind of where I draw the Kirk Cousins comparison, because you look at Kirk Cousins in Washington. What did we keep hearing? He's so good, but he doesn't have any help. We have to see what he looks like on a good team. Then he goes to Minnesota, and everybody kind of backtracks, and they go, well, now he's going to be on a good team, but maybe he is what he is. And then you look at Kirk Cousins today. Dude did not play well in the first half to 3 quarters of that game against a not great defense. And then in the fourth quarter, played excellent. But at what point is it like the quarterback that we're looking at, we have to stop putting this expectation on him to be like, dude, you have to be the guy. Obviously, you have to be the guy. But maybe Matt Stafford just isn't. Like, maybe he is more the Kirk Cousins that's incapable of doing that consistently for 4 quarters and playing at that high level and taking your team into the playoffs and winning a playoff game. I mean, he's 6-52 or 6-53 against 500 teams for a reason.
Yeah, and I think this is where the anger and frustration where Lions fans come from is you're paying this guy so much money, right? And the main complaint is he never has enough weapons. He doesn't have a defense or a run game to support him. If he's making that much money, he should be consistently good. He should be consistently leading his team down the field quarter in, quarter out, and winning games despite his defense and despite not having a run game. So I think that's where the main complaint is. If he is what he is, then he should be getting paid a lot less, and there should be big paid defensive players and big paid offensive weapons around him. That's where it comes down to at the end of the day. You
got to figure out what to do with the money that's most effective for your team. And I'm starting to get to the point where I think the past few years, right, I've been on this like Matthew Stafford makes the Lions playoff viable. He makes the Lions a team that could go to the playoffs and potentially win a game on his own. Now I'm starting to get to the point where I'm like, maybe he needs more help, and maybe you shouldn't be committing 40% of your payroll to the quarterback position when he's not capable of winning games. You don't want to be branded as a comeback kid, because all that means is you don't play well for 3 quarters, and then you either luck into good plays in the fourth, or that's what it takes to be 14 points down in the fourth quarter for you to turn it on. That's not the player you want to be.
Yeah, no, and today, like, they had all the opportunities to win this game. Like, San Francisco was literally trying to hand them the game. Stafford in the first half had so many open receivers that you've seen him make those passes before, and he just wasn't today. And maybe in the Jets game, it was the same thing. And maybe, just so far this year has not looked good for the offensive side of the ball. And maybe that falls more on Jim Bob Cooter than it does on Stafford, for all we know. I mean, we're not in the locker room. We can't discuss that. But from what we see, Stafford has been off so far this year. And then, today he did his thing in the fourth quarter. They kind of balled out a little bit. And then they had a questionable call on a near pick six by Tracy Walker away from the ball. But that's besides the point. They should not have even been in that situation in the first place. I just want to say real quick, though, that, like, I don't know if you noticed this, and maybe some of our listeners will say the same thing, but the feeling of dread after this game was not the same to me. I felt like Patricia had his crew a little bit more well-rounded today. They maybe put that, that chatter of a toxic locker room aside, and they came out and played today for the most part.
Well, I think there's merit to that. I don't know if it's Patricia has a hold on the locker room, or if it's the players are going to go out and look good for the players' sake. Like, they're all saying bad things about us. Let's be a team and go out and show them. But I do know this: something ridiculous like 96 or 97% of teams that start 0-2 do not make the playoffs. You are in a very bad spot to start this season, because honestly, first-year head coach or not, you come into an organization with a franchise quarterback and it's your first year. Starting 0-2 and missing the playoffs is far from ideal.
Yeah, and I think the main thing that I want to see now is I don't expect this team to make the playoffs anymore. I just don't. I gathered it from 2 weeks in a row. Unless something drastic changes, they're not making the playoffs. But what I want to see is just improvement all around. I want to see Stafford get better. He needs to complete those throws that I'm talking about earlier, and the defense needs to stop the run, because they couldn't stop anybody for in the second and third quarter. That was ridiculous.
You can't let Matt Breida run all over you like that. And I agree. I think they do need to get better, but I also think with the team that went 9-7 a year ago, and you could point to a lot of those losses and go head coaching is the reason why, and now you're 0-2 to start the season with a brand new head coach. I don't know. I almost think it's unacceptable at this point to have a 10-year veteran franchise quarterback playing at this low of a level, and a head coach that seems to have lost the team, a defense that at times looks completely lost, like they just don't understand the scheme. I think the Lions have a lot of problems, and I don't know that a process or like a building phase is where this team should be right now.
Yeah, I think, the defense showed some flashes today. They really did. They had like 6 or 7 sacks in the pass rush, and they only rushed like four people on most of those attempts. The main thing was just stopping the run. And Chris Spielman was, narrating the game, and he's the former linebacker of the Lions, so he should know what he's talking about. And he said it's just run gaps. Like they aren't disciplined in their run gaps, and I think that's something they can fix, watch the tape, and maybe come back and improve on. It's a new scheme too. Like we have to remember, even though it's the same personnel, it's a new scheme. That's a lot different. And I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for Matt Patricia, because it's the NFL. It's like, what have you done for me lately type of league. So I just think they got to improve. Will they? We'll see. The jury's still out on that.
Okay, really quickly before we get to our records from last week's picks and picking tomorrow night's Monday Night Football game. We have a problem with ties in this league. For the first time since 1971, I think, 2 consecutive weeks with ties. Yeah. America hates ties, and this is America's unofficial pastime. What do we do to stop this? I think you had a great idea. It's an idea I've been on board with, and I think the NFL's got to do something. What do you got?
Well, yeah, I mentioned to you earlier, like, I think the NFL needs to adopt the college football rule of overtime, because obviously you don't want your players out there for an extra 15 minutes after they've just played 15 minutes of an overtime period. So I think you start them, where you start them is, it's whatever. I personally think they should start them at the 50-yard line, start the offense at the 50-yard line and see what they can do, and then hand it over to the other team and see what they can do. I personally find the 25-yard a little corny for the college aspect, just because, like, it's just, I don't know, it gets annoying after a while. After seeing 8 overtimes in some games, you get a little sick of it. But I think that's the answer. I think they need to go to a college style overtime period because I don't want to see a tie. Like no one likes seeing a tie at the end of the year, and that being the deciding factor of why you did not make the playoffs.
Yeah, and after 60 minutes of football, asking them to play another overtime period, and I think it's to 10 minutes now, which I forgot about.
Oh,
but
yeah,
this year they changed it to 10-minute overtimes. Still, 10-minute overtimes go by like in a flash. You might get 2, maybe 3 possessions total. So, I think it's definitely a problem. I think sudden death is stupid. Both teams should have an opportunity. I benefited from a Super Bowl that ended with the Patriots winning a sudden death overtime, and I even thought then it was stupid that the Falcons' offense, with the MVP quarterback and the best wide receiver in the NFL that year, were relegated to the sideline and never had an opportunity in overtime. I think the NFL really does have to look at the overtime rules and change it to make it more fair, one, for both teams, and 2, ties suck.
Yeah, and today with Minnesota and Green Bay going to a tie, like who didn't want to see, like you would be crazy not to say you don't want to see Aaron Rodgers go out there to the 30-yard line or whatever and try to score one last time to win the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just put it mano-y-mano, end of the game, who's going to win. It's not, it's not soccer, it's not penalty kicks. It's like this is skill. This is, can you stop this team from scoring and can you get in the end zone or can you kick a field goal and hold them off? So at the end of the day, they got to do something.
Even in the Super Bowl, who doesn't want to see the MVP quarterback come out with the best wide receiver in the NFL and the best offense in the NFL and try to answer for what Tom Brady just did? Because honestly, that Super Bowl, once the Patriots won the toss, everybody knew the Falcons were not touching the football.
It was over. It was, in my opinion, once they won that toss, I was like, oh, this game's over.
Yeah.
Like, they're just going down there.
Nobody in their right
exactly
mind thought that Brady was giving the ball back to the Falcons.
No,
so, I think the NFL definitely needs to fix the overtime rules. Looking at the picks, I had a pretty piss-poor week. I went 4-8 in my picks. You can see them on Twitter. I'm not going to go through them all. But they are in my... I posted a picture, a screenshot of my notes on Twitter, at Norling Shea. Tanner, you did the same. Give them your handle.
Wait, what is my? I forgot my handle for a second.
Oh,
it's
boy.
At Tanner Seltzer. Jesus, dude. At Tanner Seltzer, one word. TANNER SELTZER. So yeah,
How'd you do this
I had a
week?
decent week. I went 6-6, not too bad.
You got a 2-game lead on me.
Yeah, we got one game left still. We got the Giants and Cowboys playing. You took the Giants, I took the Cowboys, and currently the Cowboys are up 10-0.
Oh, fuck me. I don't even have that game on. You're kidding me.
Yeah.
Oh, Dak better not be playing well.
Yeah, he has 1 touchdown pass so far. And of course, last time, funny to mention this, our last podcast, we were watching the Bears and Packers, and before we knew it, Aaron Rodgers had one of the greatest comebacks of all time. So
yeah, it's a shame that we didn't just live podcast the entire second half of that game.
We should have.
All right, so we have one more game to pick besides Giants-Cowboys. It's tomorrow night's Monday Night Football game.
Yes.
Bears are 4.5-point favorites at home against the Seattle Seahawks. We're going to pick it right now. What do you got?
After that heartbreak of a loss in Chicago, they're at Lambeau, actually. I apologize. Yep. But I'm still taking the Bears. Give me the Bears. I know Russell Wilson. I've saw some stat where he struggles coming over to the East Coast in like a Monday night game. Just something about it, and maybe a little chilly at night. Just give me the Bears. Even though that offense didn't look great, I think that defense is worthwhile and can shut down Mr. Russell Wilson.
I don't know if you shut down Mr. Russell Wilson.
Well,
I don't know that anybody shuts him down. But I do know this: the Seahawks have no offensive line, and the Bears have Khalil Mack. Give me the Bears, and I'll take the -4.5. I don't see any way that Russell Wilson plays well when he's laying on his back. I don't think this is going to come down to Kyle Fuller and the Bears secondary. I think Khalil Mack coming off the edge against a team with zero offensive line, Russell Wilson's just not going to have much of a chance to get rid of the ball.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. And even if that, and the Seattle defense is not that great either. So maybe the Bears will have a little bit more success with their little dink and dunk offense they like to run all the time. But I'm excited to watch that game tomorrow. Yeah,
I am too. And that's our show for this week, the Monday Mashup. I'm not sure which episode number it is, but I know that it's September 17th, 2018. Monday Night Football coming at you tonight as you're listening to it. Tomorrow night for us. brutal Sunday of football for me as a football fan, but I'm sure I'll get over it. And I'm sure the overreaction where people say the Patriots dynasty is over is going to come tomorrow, and then they're going to rip off 11 straight wins like they do every season. So looking forward to that too.
Yeah, we'll see. Brady always finds a way, but we'll see.
Yeah, he's got to find a way to get over that coaching now too. Thanks for listening, guys. Love you.
Thank you.